Okay, I realize this is a little late, but considering I just passed 300 episodes, I figured it was about time I updated my worst movies I reviewed list. Now, I said the last time I did this list, I've shifted a bit more to doing actual cult classics rather than just bad movies over the years, so there's not going to be a ton of new additions here, but I'll bet that some of you are wondering if I've got a new number one. Now, my rules for this list are I'm mainly judging these on entertainment value or lack of entertainment value. So it's movies that are boring or are annoying or just movies that are just a slog to get through. This means there's not going to be any entertainingly bad movies, so nothing like Star Crash or Deathstalker 2 or movies like that. Any movies where you can have a good night with some friends, drinking beers and making fun of it. None of those movies are going to be on this list. None of the Turkish movies are on this list because even though from a production standpoint, they're some of the worst and I had no idea what the hell was happening. Wasn't bored with them, so I can say that about them. So without saying too much more, here is the worst movies I've reviewed, 300th episode edition. Well, I think I got a new pick for my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 10, Dracula 3D. Alright, I'm already breaking my own rules a little bit with this one because this is actually pretty entertaining from a bad movie standpoint. There's a lot of wacky, weird shit here to enjoy, but the fact that this was directed by a previously respected director like Dario Argento earns it a spot on this list. How in the fuck did the director of Suspiria and Deep Red go from those movies to this piece of shit? It's incredible. It's typical for a lot of directors to decline as they get older. Like Quentin Tarantino has said his next movie is going to be his last one because he doesn't want that to happen to him. And even guys like John Carpenter, his last few movies weren't that great. But the decline from the stuff that Dario Argento made in the 70s and 80s to this movie has got to be one of the biggest slides for a director in cinema history. This movie looks like something the Asylum would put out as like a cash into that Dracula Unleashed or Dracula Unbound or whatever the hell it was called that came out about a decade ago. Something they just slapped together in a week, throw in some cheap, shitty CGI, shoot it in some Eastern European country that's really cheap. Who's an actor that needs a new car? Oh, Rutger Hauer? Yeah, sure, let's get him. It's a movie that anybody could have directed. Like, there's none of Dario Argento's trademark style here. All of the cinematography is just flat and boring. The effects are bad. The acting's lazy. It's got this really just cheap digital look to it. I said in my video on it that it kind of looks like footage from like an old Sega CD game from the early 90s that they just remastered the footage and made a movie out of it. It's like learning Stanley Kubrick actually made Sewer Shark or something.
1,000,000 pounds of tube steak.
Some people have told me that apparently some German producers on the movie screwed Dario over and didn't give him some money, and he apparently made this movie bad on purpose to get back at him. I don't know if I believe that. I'd be more inclined to believe it if Dario's movies hadn't already been declining before this. Like, a lot of the movies he made before this were getting pretty bad. They weren't this bad, but I mean, since probably around the early 90s, he's been sort of slowly declining in quality. But even if it is true, this is a bad strategy, Dario, because this doesn't make the producers look bad, it makes you look bad. Like, nobody watches this and goes, oh yeah, those German producers, huh? Boy, they really dropped the ball here. They watch this and go, what the fuck happened to Dario Argento? Now, having said all of that, this is still pretty entertaining. Like, you can have a fun, bad movie night with this. Any movie where Dracula turns into a giant CGI praying mantis and chops a guy's head off, that's worth a bad movie night with some friends. So put this one on with your friends and have some fun. Just make sure you watch Suspiria afterwards to remind yourself that Dario Argento can actually make something good.
Hey, you! Leave her alone! I won't let you hurt her.
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 9, Zat, or Blood Waters of Dr. Z. So, one of the things I mentioned as the criteria for these picks is if the movies are boring, and yeah, this one definitely qualifies. It's one of those movies where it feels like they had enough story for a short film or maybe like a half-hour TV episode and then just stretched it out to a full movie. You know what you're in for when the first shot is just this weird middle-aged guy just shuffling his way to a door and then slowly just puttering around this lab, showing you every little detail of what he's doing. And this is just a taste of what's to come in the movie, because you got a guy who turns into this bad Doctor Who monster, and I think he only kills like, 2 people? 3, maybe, in the whole movie, and the rest is just him walking around very slowly. Like, it's one of those movies where they can't just show him opening a door. They have to show him walking all the way up to the door, and then going through the door, and then going through the lab, and then going up the stairs to another part of the lab. And then every other character has to do the same thing. I would love to know what the process of directing this was. Like, that one shot of the stairs, I wonder if he just parked the camera there and was like, okay, let's check the script. Alright, how many characters go up these stairs? Let's see, 10 of them? Okay, we're shooting them all right now. Okay, go up the stairs. Okay, go up the stairs again, because you need, there's a part later in the movie where you go up the stairs. And actually, at the end, you need to go up the stairs, because if we don't show it, how are people going to know you got back into the lab? I think I mentioned in my video that it almost becomes hypnotic how boring it is. Almost like the director's intentionally fucking with you. Like, you think, no, they can't show him wandering through the lab again. They've already done this like 5 times. And then they do it, and they show you every little detail of it. It's almost like an art movie monster film made by a guy who was trying to make schlock, but was just so bad at it that it just looped back around. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. But yeah, the only people I would recommend this movie to are, well, one, you can watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. That's pretty funny. And people who enjoy, I guess, scenes of Muppets walking. If you like that, you might like this movie. Otherwise, probably skip this one.
Nothing at all like the catfish, but it's beautiful.
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 8, Story of Chinese Gods. Okay, I gotta be honest, I don't really remember much about this one, but when I was going over the list of movies I've done, I did remember how it made me feel. It's one of those movies that just really, really annoyed me watching it. And this one was actually a Patreon request. Never heard of it. Managed to find a copy. And it was, I think, the only time I've considered bailing on a Patreon request. I've bailed on like other movies, but they weren't Patreon requests. But this one was like, oh shit, I got paid to do this one, which means I have to, don't I? Oh, god damn it. And yeah, I remember it was a real slog getting through it, and I remember there's a cartoon version of Bruce Lee in it, and he gets swallowed by a giant snake, and he like beats up his insides and gets puked out. And there's like a little girl who's dressed up like slutty Chun-Li. I've done a lot of bad animated movies. This one didn't annoy me the most. I'll get to that one later. But yeah, something about this just really, really pissed me off watching it. Just the combination of the animation, the dialogue, the story. I don't even remember what the story was. Magic shit, Bruce Lee, I don't know. And it just, yeah, whoever requested this one, you are really lucky you paid me, because I don't think I would have made it through it otherwise. Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 7, Creepshow 3. So if Dario Argento is one of the biggest examples of a director declining, I think this is one of the best examples of a series declining. You have the first Creepshow, which is a legit cult classic. Then you have the second one, which is not nearly as good, but it's okay. And then there's this one, which is just an abomination that is not worthy of the Creepshow name. So the first Creepshow really captured the look and feel of the old, like, EC Comics. In a way, it's kind of the best Tales from the Crypt movie, even though it's not a real Tales from the Crypt film. Second one looked a little more generic, but it looked like a movie at least. The third one, the description I used, and I stand by it, this looks like a Disney Channel movie from the 90s that just happens to have gore in it. The lighting and the sets and the acting, they're all just generic and bland. All of the stories are lame. Like there's the one, like the guy has a radio with like a sexy girl's voice. And then there's one where like, oh, these students think that their teacher's wife's a robot, but whoops, she's not a robot. There's the one with the weird vampire guy that kind of looks like me. The story where there's the remote control that can change real life, because apparently the filmmakers watched that Adam Sandler movie and thought it wasn't lame enough. And the most disappointing thing about this movie is that the whole idea of having the stories be kind of interconnected, that's not bad. Like that would have been a good, if it was done well, that would have been a good way to add a twist to the series. Like Trick or Treat, that's an example of an anthology horror movie that does that really, really well. And then with this one, not only are the stories lame, but the way they link up is lame. Like in one story, you might see a character from another story like walking by and that's it. That's the only connection. There's nothing clever about the way they link up. The stories kind of all occur on the same generic suburban street, and that's it. That's the only link. So I think the only reason they did the interconnected thing was probably like a budget reason anyway. I've heard some people call this the lamest horror anthology ever made. I don't know if it is, because I haven't seen every horror anthology, but if there is one worse than this, then just God have mercy on our souls.
Professor Dayton, wait!
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 6, Bigfoot. Okay, I've talked about this one a lot. This was on the very first worst movies list, so I'm gonna probably keep it pretty brief here. This one is just boring. It's just people walking or people driving or John Carradine, cashing an easy paycheck and talking to people at a general store, and very, very little actual Bigfoot action. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's few things in life more disappointing than an exploitation movie that doesn't have the balls to exploit anything. And this is one of them. There's no gore, there's no sleaze, there's no nudity, there's just nothing. Just some guys in some shitty Bigfoot costumes, not even running around. They're just kind of slowly shuffling around, and they tie up John Carradine to a tree, and that's the worst thing they do. In fact, you know what? Instead of talking about this piece of shit, I'm going to recommend a sleazy Bigfoot movie you should watch, Night of the Demon. Now, that one has some boring parts too. That one has scenes of just people walking around and talking about boring shit, but at least it delivers on the exploitation movie part. There's some decent kills, there's some sleazy parts. It's basically like a Friday the 13th movie, but with Bigfoot killing people instead of Jason Voorhees. So yeah, you know what? Fuck Bigfoot. Watch Night of the Demon instead, if only just for the kills. You'll have a much better time.
I'll be a two-headed calf.
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 5, Things. Yeah, you knew this was going to be on the list, didn't you? So this is one of those bad movies that could best be described as an endurance test. Next time you want to mess with some of your friends, put this on and see how long they last, or at least how long until they go, what the hell is this? What are we watching? What is even happening here? And you can answer, things, which is actually not even accurate because very few things happen in this movie. It's mostly just guys sitting around drinking beer or making white bread on white bread sandwiches. It's supposedly a movie about, I think, a satanic ritual which leads to like turd ants or something. I'm not exactly sure what the story was because I haven't watched it in a while. But mostly it just looks like you're getting a snapshot on these two Canadian losers' lives. Like just an average, ordinary day. I think without the turd ants, what happens in this movie wouldn't be that much different. I think it'd just be them drinking beer and watching TV. And then every once in a while, Amber Lynn's there, obviously glancing off screen at her lines. I would really love to know, like, how they got her to be in this. Like, I'm sure, apparently the budget was like 30 grand. I'm sure 29 grand of that went to paying Amber Lynn. But, like, how did they find her? Because this was the 80s, so they couldn't have just emailed her. So did they meet her at, like, a porno convention or something? Like, how did they get her? When I mentioned that this is an endurance test, there's long stretches of either the character's not doing anything or there's no music. And when there is music, it's this, Casio demo music that just drills into your brain like some audio Chinese water torture. At the end of the movie, it says you have just experienced things, which is sort of the movie equivalent to like those old video games that say like congratulation, you've just completed a great game. And it's also... It presents it almost like it's somewhat of an achievement, like you just ran a marathon, except instead of people congratulating you for your hard work, they just go, what are you doing with your life, man? You just experienced things. Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 4, Queen Kong. I've done a lot of bad King Kong ripoffs, like Ape was one that used to be on this list. It isn't anymore. Almost made it, not quite though. And that one was bad, but there's something about a bad comedy that just really, really, really gets under your skin. I didn't laugh once in this movie. I didn't chuckle. I didn't smile. Mostly, I just groaned or rolled my eyes. It's one of those movies where a lot of the humor just comes from, oh, you know that current popular movie? Well, we're gonna shoehorn in a reference even if it doesn't make any sense to what's going on. So, like, when they're on the boat earlier, a guy has an offhand line about, oh, they seem possessed, and then, oh, their heads turn, because The Exorcist, right? Remember that one? And there's like a Jaws reference. It's like Lady Jaws, which I don't know if that movie exists, but if it's as bad as this one, I don't want to watch it. It's the 70s equivalent to those like Disaster Movie or Meet the Spartans. Just really lame humor referencing current movies. Who cares if it ties together? And the biggest shame of all is that this was a cash-in to the 1976 King Kong, which is itself a pretty bad movie. But I would still watch that over this one, because at least that one was unintentionally funny sometimes, instead of trying to be funny and failing like Queen fucking Kong.
What is the difference between male boobs and female boobs?
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 3, Space Warriors 2000. Now, I didn't include the other rip-off movies that Sampote Sans made on this list, like Hanuman and 7 Ultraman or Hanuman and the 5 Riders, because even though those are bad, low-budget movies made by a sleazy Thai businessman who tried to pretend he owned Ultraman, there is still some entertainment value to be found in them. With this one, you know right away how lazy it is when they literally use a store-bought toy of Ultraman to represent Ultraman. And then the rest of the movie is just footage from actual Ultraman shows that they remixed, which that would be bad enough. But then they add these weird, nonsensical voiceovers to them that give the characters new names and like the monsters talk that never talked before. So if you've ever wanted to see somebody America's Funniest Home Videos old Ultraman footage, I guess this is the movie for you. Information on this one is a little scarce. I think the copy I got was from like a Malaysian TV broadcast. I don't know what the standards on Malaysian TV are if they aired this shit, but this seems like the kind of movie where I didn't even know how it would have gotten made before the internet. Like, at least with the Hanuman and the 5 Riders movie, He didn't get the rights to Kamen Rider, but at least he still, I'm gonna make some costumes, I'm gonna film some action sequences. He still had to make an actual movie. With this one, it's just, I'm gonna chop up some footage, add some voiceover, stop over at Toys R Us, pick up an Ultraman toy. I'm gonna find some, some white family that's willing to be in this, and yeah, there you go. That's a movie. I think, well, I don't know, maybe the next movie is the laziest, but this is definitely one of the laziest movies I've ever done on my show. I don't even know if it really qualifies as a movie. It's more just not even a fan movie, because fan movies require more effort than this. It's just a sleazeball cash-in flick. That's all this is. And since I already mentioned that the next movie might be the laziest, I should probably get to that one.
You have been chosen for a special mission which is about to begin.
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. Number 2, Space Thunder Kids. Yeah, some of you were probably thinking this was going to be number 1, weren't you? Well, let me tell you, it came very, very close. I've done lots of unauthorized knockoffs on this show. The Turkish movies are one. I've done, stuff like Korean Tron and other bootleg animated movies. This one, by far, pissed me off the most. It's hard to explain with clips just the cumulative effect that this has on you after viewing it for an hour and a half or however long it is. Because it's based off a bunch of unauthorized Korean cartoons, which were probably pretty bad in the first place. Like, I would imagine the quality of those is probably Korean Tron at best. And then they all get chopped up and remixed into a new movie that's just completely incoherent and just numbing. It's like being hit over the head for an hour and a half. You don't know what's going on, you don't know who the characters are, you don't know who are the good guys, the bad guys, and you don't care. In my Inframan video, I mentioned that movie was like playing with your action figures as a kid, and that was a compliment. It was fun. It was like being a kid again and mixing all your action figures together and playing. This movie is the bad version of that. It's like going over to your weird cousin's house that you don't know really well, and all of his toys are like cheap, knockoff bootlegs that aren't very good, and he won't really let you play with them. He has his own story that he wants to do, and he won't deviate from it even though it doesn't make any fucking sense. And then he doesn't really know who the good guys or bad guys are, and he keeps switching. One moment these guys are fighting, and then these guys are fighting, and then he gives you one toy, but then he takes it away and says, "Oh, you got this toy now. You're the bad guy. Oh, I thought it was the good guy. No, you're the bad guy. Actually, wait a minute. Maybe you are the good guy. Oh, shit, I used the rocket punch and now it won't fit again because these toys all suck. Actually, you know what? You can't play with my toys. I'm going to go play with them over here, but you got to watch me play with them. You can't go do your own thing. You have to watch me play with my toys." That's what this movie is like. Inframan was like playing with your own toys and having a good time. This movie is like watching somebody else play with their own toys that you hate and you have no idea what the hell's going on. Hopefully that explained it well.
Hey, Pete, what's going on? Wow.
Well, I think I got a new pick from my worst movies I've done list whenever I update it. And number 1, War of the Robots. So this was number 1 last time, and Space Thunder Kids came really, really, really close to dethroning it. Honestly, you could kind of think of the top 2 as like co-number 1s. I'm sure if I made this list on a different day, they might switch places, but for now, War of the Robots holds the top spot. So this is another Star Wars ripoff, and Star Crash is an example of a cheesy, weird Star Wars cash-in that's actually enjoyable. It's fast-paced, it's colorful, it's fun. This one is just cheaper than you can possibly imagine. It's incoherent, and it hits that magical sweet spot of being boring as shit and also dumb. I explained in my video, so in Star Wars A New Hope, the Death Star last battle, that's 10 minutes of screen time. Set a new standard for space battles, 10 minutes. This movie has a final space battle that's 20 minutes, and it feels like 20 hours, because it's the same 6 just dog shit special effects shots repeated over and over and over again. Just like Space Thunder Kids, you don't know who are the good guys or who are the bad guys. It's just these little like blips that look like you're playing some old 80s arcade game. But I would much rather watch somebody play Asteroids for 20 minutes than watch this last space battle. There's something to do with like robots that have these weird Prince Valiant haircuts. I don't know. I don't even remember what the plot was other than some random pseudo Star Warsy shit happening. But again, just like Space Thunder Kids, it's hard to explain the effect this movie has without watching the whole thing, because after a little while, it just gets numbing. It's like watching a movie and there's somebody right beside you just poking you in the head the whole time. You just want to reach over and punch somebody, but there's nobody actually there and you can't punch a movie, so you can't do anything other than, I guess, turn it off. But, this is the path I chose, so I gotta watch movies like this. So, yeah, no new number one for now, although when I update this list in 100 episodes, maybe Space Thunder Kids will be above it? I don't know. Depends on how I feel, but for now I'm leaving it at War of the Robots. Anyway, let me know what you think are the worst movies I've ever done. Is there any ones I skipped or forgot about? I looked over the list pretty extensively. I think I got them all. And, is Space Thunder Kids or War of the Robots? Which one do you think is the worst? Because I'm pretty sure it's down to those two. Anyway, I'm going to get to work on the updated best movies I've ever done list, so until next time.